Welcome to another special episode of Orinoco Tribune, and this episode will focus on Haiti and whatever is happening in the country at the moment. And I said whatever is happening because a lot of things are happening in very quick succession. It's very difficult to follow, and I would say that there are more than enough reports of violence and, of course, the deeply racist portrayal of Haitians being ungovernable people. So there is also the ongoing invasion attempt against Haiti. I should say the latest invasion attempt led by the United States as usual, but with Kenya as a face, or as you called, black face. And I would say the already unsustainable political situation in Haiti has also exploded with the head of the de facto government, the unelected Prime Minister, or rather ex-Prime Minister Ariel Henry, resigning and unable to return to his country, as the aforementioned gangs have allegedly blocked the Haitian airports. So in order to discuss all these things and to put them in context and to try to understand where the country might be heading, we have with us journalist Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté. So Kim is a journalist, documentary maker, and an authority on Haitian issues. He is the founder of the weekly newspaper Haiti Liberté, where he is a writer and an editor. Previously, he wrote, edited, and photographed for Haiti Progress for 23 years. He has also written for numerous other publications, such as The Guardian, The Nation, The Intercept, The Progressive, Jacobin, and many more. And some of his well-known documentaries include Peter Kane, and I'm going to mispronounce this, ICN Leve Canfe, The Coup Continues, Killing the Dream, and Resistance. And his most recent work is the documentary series Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising, jointly directed with Dan Cohen. Ives is a member of Crowing Rooster Arts, a film collective specializing in films on Haiti. Ives is also a founding member of the International Support Haiti Network, formerly the Haiti Support Network, and has led numerous delegations to Haiti since 1986 to investigate human rights violations, union struggles, peasant land conflicts, and state enterprise privatization campaigns led by, well, fake governments, let's say. Kim Ives is one of the 4 pundits in a very popular Creole language 2-hour Sunday afternoon program, Haiti en Ondes Serum Verite, broadcast on Radio Pano, based in Brooklyn, New York. He is a frequent guest on radio and television networks and shows, including on Al Jazeera, Democracy Now!, RT, CCTV America, National Public Radio, The Hill, The Real News Network, Turkish TV, Radio Sputnik's By Any Means Necessary, and Political Misfits, programs I really like, and several Pacifica Network and Progressive Radio Network programs. So thanks a lot, Kim, for joining us today and for your valuable time also.
Thank you, Saheli. And just I have to update that this curriculum vitae. I am simply a founder of Haiti Liberté.
Oh,
there
yeah,
was 5 guys.
that was my mistake.
Oh, okay, good. And
I know you were
yeah,
one
and a
of
couple
the
of those shows have gone the way of all flesh. But it's all right. Yeah, it's a couple of
yes,
those
I understand with the Jewish-ification going on everywhere.
Right.
So RT, I suppose, I don't even know if CCTV America still functions, but anyways, it's Chinese.
It's CGTN now, right?
Yeah, it's CGTN.
It's
CGTN now. Yeah. Okay. So I remember because when I was a child, it was CCTV and it used to come to India, no longer.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'll start with the thing that I first mentioned, the gang violence. So the principal characterization of Haiti in mainstream media, as well as in most alternative media, I would say, is that it is a country besieged by gang violence. You are among the minority of people who have called this a biased depiction, or rather a simplified depiction. So what is the reality of this gang violence in Haiti? I mean, who are these gangs and what are they really doing?
Yeah, I might be in the minority of pundits, but I think the majority of people understand that the purpose of the imperialist narrative is to demonize and criminalize any resistance. And so the same way in 1915, when they were invading Haiti, they called the resistance forces bandits. Today, they have to call them gangs, which has a very pejorative, a very criminal connotation. And these are fundamentally neighborhood committees. With the debilitation of the state due to neoliberal reforms that began in earnest in 1986 after the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship, a lot of the state services and power fell away. And essentially, communities began to have to fend for themselves. And so the neighborhood committees became, in fact, the state in many neighborhoods of the city, especially as it began to mushroom as peasants were driven off the land by these same neoliberal reforms, the dumping of rice and various other commodities on the country, not only by the United States, by neighboring Dominican Republic, by other countries, and the crushing of Haitian agriculture, driving millions of peasants into the cities. As I said, Port-au-Prince has basically grown 6 times in size from about 500,000 when I started to work there in the early 80s till today. It is now 3 million people about and growing. So this phenomenon, which is not unique to Haiti, which we see throughout really Latin America, Africa, Asia, is creating these time bombs of people who are unable to survive. And so the gangs are essentially divided in 2 groups. You have some neighborhood committees, which arm themselves and become criminal, kidnapping people, raping, extorting, doing all kinds of, robberies. And then there are communities which they used to prey on, which drive them out. And they band together and they tried to keep the criminal gangs out of their neighborhood. That is what happened with Jimmy Cherizier. He did that in his neighborhoods of Delma 2, 4, and 6, which are basically in the middle of Port-au-Prince. And he succeeded in creating this crime-free zone. And then he tried to expand it to other neighborhoods, or he tried to, I should say, ally with other neighborhoods, which were doing the same thing with other neighborhood leaders who had the same vision, who said, we cannot, be prey to these criminals. We have to have some order. And Haitian culture is a very orderly culture. Haitians, it's not common you'll see a Haitian as poor as they might be. They might have no food in their belly for 2 days, but they will dress nicely. They will put on a pressed pair of pants and as clean a shirt as they can find. And, they try to do things in an orderly way. And so there was or has been this really response to the criminals of trying to establish order. And in fact, in the countryside of Haiti, there are very few police. You very rarely find police. Most of the justice done out there is what they call expedited justice, where if some guys are trying to rob or do some crimes in an area, population comes out, they have their machetes and, they finish with the people right on the spot. So in any case, this growth of the fight between these anti-crime neighborhoods and the criminal neighborhoods has basically been the story of the past 5 years in Haiti, of a fight between the coalition that Jimmy Cherizier built called the G9 and the criminal coalition, which was formed the very next day, called the GPEP. And they have been butting heads, occasionally having truces and peaces, but butting heads for the past 5 years. But finally, they have, well, in that period, the US always called anybody with a gun who was of the popular classes a gang. Like the bourgeoisie up in the hills of Port-au-Prince, they're all armed. They have whole arsenals in their homes, sometimes 100, 200 guns. They don't call them gangs, but any popular person who has a gun, he's a gang member. They're gangs. They're all criminal. And in my UN address in December 2022, I stressed this. I said they putting the good guys and the bad guys all in one basket called the gangs. So yeah, this gang, people have to understand the nuances and the political purpose of the use of the word gangs and gang violence, which is really nothing more than the terminology that they're using so they can justify foreign military intervention. Once again, for the third time in 3 decades, the first time having been in 1994, that they're trying to do it once again. And of course, there was the 1915 to 1934 19-year U.S. Marine military occupation of Haiti as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, yeah, Haiti has been a country that has been actually besieged by imperialism from the day it was born as an independent country. It is understandable that the imperialists will be calling the anti-imperialists gangs, irrespective of who they are. So, coming to the current Haitian crisis, I would say that one of the main figures, or at least one of the main visible figures in the crisis, is the, well, now ex-prime minister. Well, he was never a real prime minister anyway, but the ex-prime minister, Ariel Henry, who announced on 12th March, I think, that he was going to resign. So who is this person? Like, who is Ariel Henry? From where did he come? And what has been his role behind the situation, the current crisis in which Haiti finds itself?
Ariel Henry is a neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon, who I could say has for at least the last 20 years been one of the Washington's principal agents in Haiti. They select certain individuals historically to be their sort of lead agent in Haiti. They're the ones who make declarations, who head a civil society group, who do, behind the scenes maneuvering, lobbying, organizing, etc., for U.S. interests. Ariel Henry, as far as I know, first played a key role for the U.S. as a member of what was called the Council of Sages in 2004. The U.S. carried out a coup d'etat against President Jean-Bertrand Aristide on February 29th, 2004. And so now they had the problem of how to create the semblance of a legitimate process. And it was not legitimate at all. It was completely just manufactured, all this mumbo jumbo that they created to somehow justify their intervention and coup. But they established what's called the Council of Sages. I believe it had 6 members. And Ariel Henry was one of them. And the purpose of these 6-member Council of Sages, which was just completely arbitrarily established, was to select a new government, which had been already picked and already selected by the US. A prime minister who had been a former international financial institution functionary for decades, a guy called Gérard Latortue, and then a president who was Boniface Alexandre. So this Council of Sages had that role. So he was first part of it. He played in that. And he was deployed in different sectors. Originally, he had been sort of part of the social democratic currents, which surrounded President René Préval, who was in some ways sort of the mentor, and the people would call him Aristide's twin. They ended up really not very good terms, but in the popular eyes and imagination, they remained twins because they're both sort of small in stature and similar sort of physically. And René Préval had a couple of, I could say, parallel social democratic parties, one called Pampra, which became Fusion. And Ariel Henry was somewhat associated with this sector, the social democratic sector, but he gradually moved over into the next sector, kind of a neo-Duvalier's far right current called the Haitian Bald-Headed Party, PHTK, which brought in Michel Martelly and afterwards Jovenel Moïse. So he moved over into the Martelly camp. So he had contacts everywhere in the social democratic, basically, let's call them the Democratic Party of the Haitian political class, to the PHTK, which we'll call the Republican Party of the Haitian political class. And so when Jovenel Moïse was faced with trying to find a prime minister in June of 2021, he had to select somebody who would please people. And he had a phone call with President Michel Martelly, at whom he was at odds to some extent with former Prime Minister Laurent Lamotte, with whom he was pretty much in tune. So Martelly, in that phone call, was very insistent that he put in Ariel Henry. And finally, Jovenel and Lamotte kind of relented too. They relented and said, okay, we'll put in Jovenel, we'll put in Ariel. And so on the Monday, the 5th of July, 2021, they said Ariel Henry is the new designated prime minister. He will be sworn in on July 7th. Unfortunately, on the morning of July 7th, at 1 a.m., 1:15 a.m., Jovenel Moïse was machine gunned to death by this Colombian hit squad that had been infiltrated into the country 3 months earlier. And he never was sworn in. So the interim prime minister at that period was a guy called Claude Joseph, who was similarly had been used by the US previously in the coup against Aristide in 2004 as sort of a student agitator. But he was younger, less tested, maybe less trusted. And so there was a brief chest bumping period between Claude Joseph and Ariel Henry for about 2 weeks. And finally, after 2 weeks, the US, with a tale of quisling embassies, basically its allies, Canada, France, Spain, Brazil, unfortunately, and a few others, OAS and so forth, designated Ariel Henry to be the prime minister. They did it with a tweet. And that's how he became prime minister, basically through the vote or dictate or consensus of the US and its allies. And so he never had any legal, during the next 2 years that he was in power, the parliament completely expired. And so there are absolutely no elected officials in Haiti today. And Ariel Henry just became a strong man whose strength came from the backing of the US State Department. So essentially, this episode we've just seen where he left the country, Jimmy Cherizier gathered together his new alliance of armed groups and they shut down the airports, or they shut down the airport in Port-au-Prince. People in Cape Haitian shut down theirs on their own. And those are the only two airports a plane carrying his delegation could land. And that's where we are today.
Yes, that's a well, yeah. That's I wouldn't say that's a very
A little more than
unsurprising.
you bargained for in terms of an
No, but it's not very unsurprising. I didn't know
Yeah.
that he was a brain surgeon. I mean,
Yes,
he could have had a good career in that instead of doing all
that's
this.
right. I
Instead
know.
of doing all
Boy,
this.
somebody should give him some brain surgery, it sounds like.
But anyway, yeah, a brain surgeon without a brain himself is
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
bit rare thing. But anyway, so I was asking you, I was going to ask you something else related to related to Henry's resignation. So you described him as someone without a country. So he was unable to return to Haiti because, as you mentioned, the airports were shut down by the gangs. So at the same time, if I'm not wrong, there was a meeting in Jamaica between the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and the CARICOM, uh, which adopted some resolution about something. And then Ariel Henry announced his resignation. So what has been the role of both? I mean, the gangs and the Jamaica meeting led by Antony Blinken behind this stepping down by Henry.
Well, just like the Council of Sages and so forth in 2004, the US recognizes the need to create something to take power, because right now, and this is a huge advantage for this revolution, there's nothing that's in any way sanctified by a vote. Everything is it's essentially a tabula rasa in Haiti right now. So Blinken made an emergency visit to Jamaica using, again, a blackface diplomatic front in the form of CARICOM. It's not all of CARICOM, but 3 countries in particular he's relying on. Guyana, whose President Irfan Ali is one of the principal proxy tools in the war against Venezuela today, as we know, over the debate over the contested territory of, you'll fill it in for me, Saheli.
Essequibo.
Essequibo, thank you. And then Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who has also been showing herself to be more royalist than the king. And then, of course, Jamaica's Andrew Holness, who is the prime minister there, who has been hosting many of the CARICOM meetings. So he ran down there, and they first had a meeting. There were no Haitians present, where they decided what was going to be done, how they were going to put it together. And then they, brought in a few Haitians, and mostly on Zoom, as I understand it. And they announced their big new formula, which was essentially the entire Haitian political class with 7 members, a 7-member presidential commission, transitional presidential commission, 7 members voting and 2 members who are observers, civil society and the religious sector. There's just all names they give their puppets, their quislings. So this was rolled out in one day. Obviously it had all been decided at the State Department days before. This is what we'll do. We got to get Lavalas is one. Lavalas, unfortunately, has become one of the most reactionary, or I could say accommodating political players in Haiti over the past 2 decades, 3 decades maybe. And we got to get Petit Dessalines, which is a breakaway from Lavalas, headed by Moïse Jean-Charles. And then they had a few other of the political class parties, like ED of Claude Joseph, Red, which includes Senator Yuri Latortue and a few others, Senator Lambert from the South, Southeast, I should say. The coalition, which called the December 21st coalition, which included all Ariel Henry's Confederates, and a few others. So basically, the length and breadth of the Haiti's political class, and most importantly, maybe the group called the Montana Group, which had been really the number 2 contender for Ariel Henry's spot. And this is combined of a lot of, or led, I should say, by a lot of the people who championed the coup against Aristide in 2004, with a fringe of, we call them the NGO left, who also supported the coup against Aristide in 2004. But here they were basically trying to get Washington's nod to be the new group leading Haiti. We've written quite a bit about this in Haiti Liberté. So this coalition was put together, but Senator Moïse Jean-Charles, who had gone into an alliance only 2 weeks earlier with Guy Philippe, who we can talk about in a minute, who was leader of that 2004 coup d'etat, the armed forces, the armed quote unquote rebels that helped dislodge Aristide in 2004. Moïse, who had fought with Philippe up in the north of Haiti back in 2004, when he came through Moïse's hometown of Milo, they made a coalition called the Heads Together to Save Haiti Coalition, and they announced the government. They proposed a provisional government. And so this was basically the first proposal on the table, which was ostensibly, at least, completely Haitian devised, led, proposed, concocted. And it had the support of many groups allied with the coalitions around each of those leaders. So he, who had been proposed in Blinken's formation, he said, I reject it. I'm not going to, this is crazy. We've overthrown the government, and now I'm going to sit down and negotiate with that same government. And everybody clapped. We had it on the front page of Haiti Liberté on Wednesday. On the bottom, he rejects it, and then the next day, he flipped. He said, no, okay, I will go into it. And he's since gone into Blinken's formulation, saying that the Russians convinced him to go into it, which is a total lie. We have contacts with Russian diplomats, which we called and, said, is that true? And they said, absolutely not, and other sources that I have who also speak to Russian diplomats said exactly the same thing. The Russians said, we had nothing to do with that. Don't put us in it. So this is typical Moïse Jean Charles. He's a very mercurial character who has generally had a left-leaning reputation, but who is ready to do pirouettes and totally go in the opposite direction after, promising not to do so. So everybody right now, as we speak, is very dismayed, very disgusted, really, with Moïse's about face. And so they're pushing to get this through as fast as possible so they can get U.S. Proxies on the ground in the form of Kenyan, Beninian, Chadian, Spanish, Barbadian, what have I left out? A few others, Bahamian, boots on the ground in Haiti to crush this uprising.
Okay, so it seems that the entire political class, or maybe almost entire political class of Haiti is with this. I was actually going to ask you about it, but you answered already. What is the position of the political parties? And one can understand that why there would be gangs, because whom you can trust in the political parties, right? In fact, I had seen Moise Jachar with President Maduro, like when he had a left sort of reputation, and I had imagined that he would be skipping to it, but of course it seems that he didn't. So since we have talked about the political class, I would also ask you about the role of especially Jimmy Cherizier, not only in the armed insurgency, but specifically about what role did G9 and other forces around G9 played in forcing Henri to resign? Like, how much political power does Cherizier and the organizations around him have to make Ariel Henry resign, or at least play a part in his resignation?
Well, as I explained a little earlier, after that dress rehearsal of autumn 2022, he decided to unite with the criminal gangs of the JPEP into a new front called the Vive Ensemble. And we posted online through Uncaptured Media, the media outlet of Dan Cohen, my collaborator on films of the past 2 or 3 years, Another Vision, as well as a redacted piece and a piece that we're about to release on the current situation. And in that extended video, you see a discussion between Jimmy Cherizier and his former foes of Bel Air, which was one of the neighboring and principal opponents he'd been fighting with for years, saying, we're going to stop fighting among each other and we're going to fight against the oligarchy. So this Vive Ensemble coalition essentially was responsible for stopping Ariel Henry. And this was something which I could say the Haitian population was quite leery of when it was first announced, but I received many calls from many Haitians who said, well, the ends justify the means. That is, they managed to get Ariel out, and this was the overwhelming demand of so many people. And so this got Jimmy Cherizier's stock very, very high. He is riding high right now. Now, working with these criminal gangs, they're undisciplined. It's not an army. It's not the July 26th coalition of Fidel in 1958. This is a somewhat uncontrollable force which can do bad things. And in fact, Jimmy Cherizier has made a press conference or two where he said, listen, people, do not, the guns are not against the people. They're against the oligarchy. They're against the police. They're against the status quo. So please do not do any exactions against the people. I've heard some reports saying the armed groups have been better. There's less fighting, less violence, but at the same time, there have been some cases which have been bad of people's houses burned or so forth. Now, in any war, in any conflict, in any revolution, you're going to have collateral damage. You're going to have opportunists who take advantage of the situation to settle scores or to, grab something they wanted from somebody else, etc. So, but of course, in the age of universal cameras and cell phones and social media, these things can be amplified and used to basically discredit the process. And that's what's happening to some extent. I think that, Cherizier is trying to bring this force forward. And he remains, to me, one of the principal voices and I could say authorities in the current situation. The other one is Guy Philippe, who is, as I said, this former rebel leader from 2004, who was basically cast off by the US in 2004 after he played a pivotal role in helping to overthrow Aristide, which was a terrible thing. We wrote greatly against it when I was at Haiti Progrès and also at Haiti Liberté. We used WikiLeaks documents to, more or less talk a bit about his very unfortunate bad role in that. But he was, ironically, coming really almost from an ultra-left position, I could say, because his feeling at the time was that Aristide had betrayed his vows of the 1990s and become some kind of sellout, even though he himself, to cure this selling out, in his words, ended up working with the US, getting funding and weapons, and I'm sure some kind of financial support from the US. And so when the US put him aside, and then a few years later accused him of drug trafficking and began to send teams to go try to arrest him, which he eluded, he became very, very angry and it seems, and quite bitter against the US, not only double-crossing him and betraying him, but pursuing him. And eventually they organized his capture in 2017. He had gone on to become the elected senator of the South, where he is very popular. He is from the South. He had his base in a town called Pestel, a very picturesque, beautiful town on the southern coast of Haiti, and is some sort of hero of the South. And when he went to a radio interview in Port-au-Prince as senator-elect, they swept in and arrested him and took him to Miami and charged him with drug trafficking and money laundering. He's always vehemently denied those charges. And we've looked at them and see that they're pretty flimsy. It's quite apparent that there was a lot of fast and loose playing. But his lawyer apparently in Miami said, listen, it was conspiracy to commit money laundering. And the minute you hear the word conspiracy in it, you're basically cooked, because they can say anything's a conspiracy. So he took a plea deal, even though he tried to renege on that and bring a lawsuit to overturn it and get $100,000 in compensation, which he dropped after that. I'm not sure why he dropped it, but he did. In any case, he got a 9-year sentence, which with good conduct, you get out in about 7. He served about 6.5 years, 6 years, 8 months, I think, in jail in the US. So he was brought back to Haiti on November 30th of 2023. And he'd been doing a lot of interviews from his jail cells in the United States. He speaks English fluently, Creole, Spanish. He was trained in Ecuador to be a soldier. He went on to be a police chief. So he started to give speeches. He's a very, very articulate, eloquent speaker, silver tongue, as they say. And he began to give internet. He has a website. He began to give internet talks, videos, and he made a sort of truck top tour of various towns around the country. And he went up to the north, where there was a canal being built off the Massacre River. Now, this is a big deal because this canal is the first canal, irrigation canal, taken off the Massacre River in the north of Haiti. The Dominican Republic has 11 such canals off the river, but they took great exception to Haiti building one. And so there ended up being a sort of confrontation up there between the Dominicans and a force called the BESAP, which stands for the Surveillance Brigade for Protected Spaces. And this is a kind of a park ranger outfit, armed. It began with about 300 park rangers. It's now numbers somewhere between 15 and 50,000, mostly volunteer members who have kind of haphazard uniforms. Many of them have no arms, etc. But this confrontation between the BSAP agents and the Dominicans back in, I believe it was November of 2023, made this force, the BSAP, the heroes of Haiti, defending Haitian sovereignty and the canal that's near the town of Ouanaminthe. So the director of this force is a guy who's associated with Guy Philippe. And so Guy Philippe became sort of identified with this force. And he spoke up in Ouanaminthe. He spoke in a few other towns. And his speeches are amazing. You know, there's nothing you can argue with them. You know, they're anti-imperialist. They're talking about Haiti's self-determination, independence, history, what they can do, denouncing the Americans, denouncing foreign intervention in Haiti and foreign meddling and everything. You know, it's wonderful stuff, and Haitians love it. And so he is, in many ways, I'll say, the most popular figure in Haiti. And in a way, maybe more popular even than Cherizier, because Cherizier has been so demonized, so had so much mud and feces thrown at him to demonize him as a gang leader and a criminal, that, you know, has Haitian public opinion just a little uneasy about him in some quarters. Some people are fanatically for him, many people. But Guy Philippe has also some bad press, but not as much. And his speeches are amazing. And they take a lot from Cherizier. They take a lot of the themes that Cherizier has been saying over the years. So they are almost, I could say, kindred spirits. And in the article that I did 2 days ago in Haiti Liberté, about Ariel Henry's actually being some kind of prisoner in Puerto Rico right now, a pawn. I spoke the same day, Tuesday, this past Tuesday, to both Cherizier and to Guy Philippe. And Cherizier said, listen, if Guy Philippe comes in at the head of a presidential council, I have no problem. He's saying the same things. We're shooting for the same things. I hope he means it. I hope he keeps it. And Guy Philippe also gave a kind of a nod to Cherizier in one of his speeches in Petit Goave in December. And he said, to the quote unquote gangs, please lay down your arms, follow Commander, that's the word he used, Commander Jimmy Cherizier's advice and lead. So I think the two of them are basically looking for the same thing, giving the same message. And so this is a very long-winded answer, I know, to your question, but Jimmy Cherizier is playing an important role, but to some extent in concert and in step with Guy Philippe.
Okay. Yes, actually, I was going to ask you about Guy Philippe. So yeah, you answered it before. But anyways, I read about him in 80 Liberty, and I saw that he was popular, that he went to Port-au-Prince. And I was also asked by people that why was he released early from the United States? I got the answer from you that with good conduct and stuff, his sentence was reduced. At least, I mean, he was released before the end of his sentence. So there may be nothing in it, or there may be. And it's also very interesting because many ultra left people have this kind of problems. Like he has a similar sort of problems that ultra left leaders seem to have. Ended up meddling himself, and now talking against meddling, like foreign meddling and all. So I can understand. Like I got my answer. That's why he's popular. What did it too? And yes, we were very. I would say that Orinoco Tribune, we were sort of apprehensive that a person like this who had participated in the coup against Aristide in 2004 now seems to be saying things that were very similar to Aristide in the 90s. So yeah, it's
well, they
interesting.
very similar. And we too were apprehensive. If you look at the arc of Haiti Liberté articles from early December when he just arrived until of late, we've in the beginning were not really clear how serious. Was he honest? Was he real? Was he sincere? Was this some sort of psyop? Was he a plant? Did they do this on purpose? So all those questions were going through our minds too. But he's been very consistent. He's seems very sincere, and I could see how he would be pretty miffed, pretty outraged with how the U.S. treated him, even though I can't imagine why he would have gotten into bed with the U.S. in the first place in 2001 to 2004. I mean, I can understand that, maybe he wasn't fully developed, but he often cites Fidel, Thomas Sankara, Che Guevara, Hugo Chavez as sort of models. Some people who are would say that at some point he held up Ronald Reagan and Augusto Pinochet. I don't know when he said those people were people he admires. I have to look back and see what that. I haven't had time to research that, but in any case, right now, whether you like it or not, Guy Philippe is very, very popular. And I think, if you had a presidential run, he would be, if not the winner, very close to the winner. Meanwhile, Aristide and the Famille Lavalas has been so completely, how shall I say, taking up the rear of the political class. They oppose the resignation of President Michel Martelly back in the 2000 15 period. Aristide was meeting with Ariel Henry on several occasions. And at one point, their spokesman said, well, we kind of a nonsensical statement, but we didn't put him, so we can't remove him, was what the spokesman said. So, and then they joined this council, and I think I neglected to say that before. The condition for joining this council, this quote unquote Haitian-led council that Blinken put together, was that you have to agree with the foreign intervention of the Kenyan and the MSS force into Haiti. So, the fact that they once again have bent over, bowed down, and gone into this is just outrageous and terrible. So things have flipped. Here we have the people standing up to the U.S. and denouncing them and saying we're not going along. There's Guy Philippe, and the ones saying we're going with the U.S. and we're going to be part of their government is Lavalade. So anyway, as happens in these revolutionary periods, everything is topsy-turvy, upside down. And but basically on the ultra left, a lot of people will point to, for instance, former U.S. Ambassador Pamela White saying, oh, Guy Philippe, we should work with him. We can work with him. You see, that's proof that he's an agent. Well, okay, but you're agreeing with Brian Nichols and with Anthony Blinken and with the CIA and the NED and all these. You're taking one agreed ambassador who didn't play a great role, Pamela White, but you're not denouncing all these others. So anyway, the larger picture, as we presented in our film Another Vision and in other writings in Haiti Liberté, is that this is a genuine uprising, and I think that both the Vive Ensemble coalition of Jimmy Cherizier and this Guy Philippe / BSAP force that is happening in the countryside mostly, not so much in Port-au-Prince. This is really the rest of Haiti sort of force. And we visited, Dan Cohen and myself, we visited the BSAP base up in Cape Haitian and, spoke to them. And it's a very interesting phenomenon to really see it taking shape, and it may play a very important role in the weeks ahead.
Yes, I can see. I mean, it's really surprising and not at all understandable why Aristide, who was overthrown by a U.S. intervention, would now support another U.S. intervention in all shape and form, except getting the UN seal. And it would be, even according to the UN, it's a non-UN mission. So,
right. And it should be said, he was also invited the very first military, or the very second military intervention in 1994, because he came back on the shoulders of U.S. troops in 1994. So this was really opening the door to these interventions. That was really, really unfortunate that he agreed to it. And my mentor and the head of our paper at the time, Haiti Progrès, who had been his itinerant ambassador, resigned because he allowed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, but anyway. So since we are talking about, I mean, this non-UN multinational security support mission, or whatever they call it. So apart from CARICOM, apart from the Haitian political class in general, we also had the CELAC supporting this thing. So in the latest summit at the Kingstown Declaration of that CELAC summit held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, expressed support for this US-led, basically a US intervention mission in Haiti, but they cloaked the support in diplomatic jargon, and I quote, which I read from Haiti Liberté, "We call for the prompt and effective implementation of the United States Security Council Resolution 2699/2023, including the establishment of the necessary security conditions in Haiti as a means to hold free and fair elections in Haiti and lay the foundations for long-term sustainable economic and social development in the country, strengthening security and addressing the underlying structural causes of ongoing violence and vulnerability. There is so much nonsense there, but anyway, the question is, why would CELAC? CELAC is like, he's supposed to be an alternative to the US Ministry of Colonies, that is the Organization of American States. So why would such an organization support a disguised invasion of Haiti, as President Maduro called it at the summit, and he expressed himself against it? So why would CELAC support this?
Right. Well, I think it was my particular take is that it was ignorance. And I think what happened, and we can't underestimate the empire as clumsy and stupid as its moves have been in recent months, and from Palestine to Yemen to Haiti. Because Secretary Blinken, the week before the CELAC summit, flew to Brazil. He's like a firefighter putting out all the fires around the empire. He flew to Brazil to meet with Lula to push. I think that Lula put this particular item into the CELAC statement, so it was a kind of a judo move on the part of Blinken. And Lula, for all his excellent statements on Gaza and against Israel, has been still totally blind to the Haitian side of things. And I don't know if he's trying to justify or protect his legacy or what, but in any case, I think probably behind the scenes at CELAC, he was the one who said that we got to put this in, the Haitians, it's a terrible situation, there has to be something done. And I think a lot of the other countries may have not really read Resolution 2699, not really understood what it was. Thank God Maduro made his statement, which was excellent, even though he made a not so good statement a few days later, kind of characterizing the gangs, quote unquote, as similar to what was the movement called in Venezuela, where they used some lumpen groups to attack the government.
Guarimba.
Guarimbas, yeah, thank you. So the Guarimbas, the comparison doesn't match, doesn't fit, so, but at least I think that's an honest mistake. I can understand it. Haiti's not central to the core interests maybe of some of these countries, or they don't realize how central it is yet. But in any case, so I think this got in there through really negligence, or a lot of the members of CELAC not realizing, because to me, the driving forces of CELAC are really Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Colombia, these countries who are progressive anti-imperialist, and I think they should have been a little more, shall I say, veatif